self-made millionaire Steve Siebold says anyone can hit life's jackpot.
Steve Siebold is a world-class expert on mental toughness training for increasing sales, developing people, and managing change. He's a best-selling author and popular television interview guest on mental toughness for building wealth, getting fit, and excelling in sports.
How does a rich person look at money? What do they see? They see
lots of it.
And just available out there in the universe?
It's everywhere, especially with the recession. We have total chaos in the economy all over the world, world economy.
So they see opportunity.
They see opportunity because there's all these problems. Because where there's chaos, there's opportunity to solve problems, to make money.
Someone said that the rich, having made a lot of money last year in the stock market and maybe some money in the housing market, the rich have an obligation to spend that money to help the economy. And you say?
Why? Why are they obligated? I mean, these people didn't make their money robbing banks. They made their money solving problems.
Because it would be good for the economy.
So is solving problems. I mean, do people want their problems solved or not? If they want their problems solved, you're going to have to look to the innovators, the job producers, the creators.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Siebold.
Hey everyone, it's Steve Siebold. Welcome back to the Personal Development Podcast. Glad to have you guys here. And I'm very excited today to introduce our guest and to ask some great questions. I've known this gentleman for at least 25 years, I believe, and we've spoken on lots of programs together. He's the recent past president of Toastmasters International, which you may know. If you don't know, it's I'm going to let him explain what it is, but this is the biggest public speaking organization that trains people in public speaking and leadership and other things all over the world. Over 100 years old, amazing organization. I've been a member of it for years. And Matt is the past international president, which is no small feat. And he just finished up his term and he was on the board and just all great stuff. And so I can give you my personal introduction, but I want to read from Matt's formal introduction so you kind of get a background on this gentleman before we get into the question. So I'm gonna read more of the formal introduction. So Matt's from Coral Springs, Florida, not too far. We used to live in Boynton Beach during the winter, and so that's how we got to know Matt initially. And he lives with his wife Janine, his boss, and Janine's fantastic. She's a very good speaker, as is Matt. Matt's a business and community leader. He's got more than 30 years of business and community leadership experience. Just a couple highlights. Personally, he's the father of two, the grandfather of two, which is unbelievable. And he's been married to Janine for 35 years. Unbelievable. We met them. They hadn't been married that long, and neither had we. And so time goes so fast. But on the business side, Matt is the managing director and chief information security officer for IT Fusion, which is an IT and cybersecurity consulting company that he co-founded in Florida. Very successful company. Matt has more than 17 years of entrepreneurial experience. So for you entrepreneurs, here's a guy that knows what he's talking about. As a result, he's currently serving his third term on the Coral Springs Economic Development Advisory Committee. On the community side, Matt served on multiple nonprofit boards of directors, including most recently, as I mentioned, as international president and chairman of the board of Toastmasters International from 2022 to 2023. Matt's also, as I am, he's a graduate of the Bill Gove Speech Workshop. So with that, I want to welcome my old friend, Matt Kinsey. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Steve.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. You're looking good.
Yeah, thanks. You too. I know you've been traveling all over the world for Toastmasters. Tell us a little bit about that. That's been an experience, huh?
Oh, well, Toastmasters is in 150 countries and territories around the world. So when you're on the board as an executive officer, which I was for the last 5 years, you get an opportunity to go visit the local districts. So I got to go to Pakistan, Dubai, had a long layover in Qatar, Tanzania, Brazil, Portugal, Canada, Singapore, just going and meeting our members. And it looks like in April or May this coming year, I'll be going to Japan and South Korea as well.
Geez, that's beyond Delray Beach, I guess, huh?
A little bit.
Well, Dawn and I we're really honored to be able to see you get inducted, as president. in what was it, Nashville or Nashville?
It was Nashville.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was a big event. That was just fantastic. I know that was just a big achievement for. I know you worked on that for a long time. And are you glad you did it?
Yeah, I mean, that's from the time I actually submitted my paperwork to run for the board the first time till the time I finished serving on the board was 11 years. And people ask me, would you do it again? It's like, yeah, absolutely, I would do it again, because there's still problems that need solutions at Toastmasters. And it's an organization that's helped me a lot. And I really want to see it help more people around the world develop their communication leadership skills. So,
how many members are there,
again.
Toastmasters, Matt? How
Pardon?
many members approximately are there?
275,000.
Wow. How many clubs?
Around 13,000 clubs.
Jeez, that is amazing. Over 100 years old, right?
Yeah, we just celebrated our 100th anniversary. Actually, the official 100th anniversary is in about 6 weeks, but we had our 100th anniversary celebration kickoff at the year in August, just a few weeks ago.
Geez, you think how many clubs start like that, just different kinds of clubs, civic clubs, leadership clubs, whatever, speaking clubs, and how many make it 100 years? I know Rotary and Toastmasters. I think that's all I know.
Right now, there's some others that are getting close to 100 years, but they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about, for people that don't know Toastmasters International, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's the world's largest organization, as you mentioned in the intro, that helps people develop public speaking, communication, leadership skills. And we do that in a positive and supportive environment. So, we meet in a club with a small group of people. People deliver speeches. They get instant feedback on what they've done well, what they can work on to, or at least to think about improving the next time. And then outside of that, there's a lot of leadership opportunities. But the most important thing is we want people to feel safe. If you give a bad speech, at a convention, people remember that, and there's some consequences. But in Toastmasters, there's really not any consequences, because we're there to support you to get better. A lot of professional speakers use Toastmasters as a great place to practice their material. We don't train professional skills, but certainly people react, and people in Toastmasters really not any different from people in any other walk of life. So their reactions to your material is a great way to practice material for those who want to speak professionally. But many people, it's just, hey, I've got to give a presentation at work in front of my boss, and maybe I've got a promotion hanging on it, and I need to get better at that. Or I've taken a new opportunity, and I've got to present to the board on a regular basis. Or maybe I'm going to be doing something in the community. I'm going to run for a civic office, and now I've got to go out and do a debate and do press conferences. So we can help people practice those in a very safe environment.
Yeah, it is. There's no way to argue with the success of Toastmasters. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's amazing. And of course, you and I were both members of the Bill Gove Toastmasters Club back in, what year did you join the Bill Gove Club, Matt? It's been so long, I can't remember.
Around 2007.
2007. Okay, so we started in 2000. And so that's when you came in 2007. That's now, it's unbelievable. And of course, without Ed Lamont, that club wouldn't have ever survived, but it sure did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And John Spaneth and the whole cast of leaders. It was fun to see people come in. I mean, obviously we're in the business of speaking, but it was fun to see people come in that, were so afraid and I think all of us at some point, me included, were terrified of public speaking. And it really holds you back, it holds you back from moving forward in a lot of things, because you do anything to avoid it because it's terrifying. And then you watch people get up there like you and I have for years, and they just literally, the fear just melts away over a period of maybe a couple of months,
Yeah. And I think really, going back to your mental toughness concept, I think it's really not fear of speaking. I think it's fear of criticism and fear of opening up. And once they realize it, I think the biggest change for me was when I realized that, hey, there's nobody in the audience who wants me to perform poorly. Everybody in the audience wants me to be good, if nothing more than just so it's a good use of their time. So I think that once you realize the audience is on your side when you're speaking 99% of the time, that makes it a lot easier, because you're not worried about the criticism. But I think that's really what the fear is.
Oh, I think you're right. You don't want to say something stupid, look stupid, or have people laugh at you. And of course, if you ever were in school and you got laughed at, which probably all of us at some point, I suppose, I know I did. You get laughed at, and then you think, okay, don't ever do that again. Never stand up. Don't say anything. Just shut up and, keep to yourself. But
Yeah,
it's tough to
absolutely.
get ahead if you do that, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's almost impossible to get ahead if you do that. I mean, there are some people who are just, geniuses in their field, and they can just sit behind a door and produce amazing things. That is, to use the modern terminology, that's a unicorn. You don't find a lot of those out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Yeah, you got to get out in front of people and say who you are and what you do. And yeah, but what was it like to serve as president of this giant organization, this international organization? What was that experience like?
I think it's one of those times where you go in and you realize that, okay, I'm in this position, and I noticed my language changing as I got closer to being in that chair. Because at first I said, okay, well, when I'm the president. And then I realized that I hadn't said that in well over a year. And what I said is when I'm sitting in that chair, or when I take the office of the president, because it's much bigger than you. You're a caretaker for a year, and you have to keep that in mind. The other thing is there's certainly things that every president wants to change. But are you just changing things to change them, or are you changing them for a purpose? And do you want to create a situation where your successor feels pressured into doing something just because you did it? So you really have to get out of your own space in your own head. You got to get out of your own ego and into a spirit space, more of a connection with the members space, and saying what's best for the organization. So that's part of that mindset. The second thing is you're solving big problems. There are so many challenges, especially as the pandemic came and impacted Toastmasters, an organization that had met in person for 96 plus years when the pandemic hit us, and all of a sudden had to pivot. And if you would ask me at the beginning, could we have done that? I probably would have said no. But then I saw people just do amazing things. And it's a reminder that no matter what the position you're in, there's a, collective wisdom that will always be better than, the way one of our board members said it was, our board of 20 members will never be as smart as our 270,000 members worldwide. So we have to listen to them and make decisions in their best interest while keeping the information that we know that maybe the average member doesn't know in mind to come up with the best solution. And then the most important thing is you're working with a group of amazing people who've accomplished tremendous things. Everyone talks about your level of thinking is, the average of the 20 people you spend your time with. And boy, I would spend a lot of time with 20 really high level thinkers. So my thinking was challenged on a almost daily basis for me to get better. And I just love that type of environment.
What are some of the biggest things you learned during your tenure?
I think one of the biggest things I learned was growing up, I think one, we talked a little bit about it. It's not about you. That leadership chair is not about you. You're sitting in that chair. It's about the chair. I think the second thing I learned was that it's very dangerous to underestimate people. People will rise to the challenge that you give them. There were people who I saw on the board who, when they started on the board, I'm like, okay, I could tell they love Toastmasters. I can tell they got some basics, but they don't have a complete understanding of what we're trying to do, which I didn't either when I joined the board. So this is no criticism of them. It's just a reality. You don't know what you don't know. And then you get in there and they would absorb this information and make changes in their perspective. So that was the other thing. And I think the biggest thing was to get curious. You have to get curious. When someone in an organization across 150 countries, there's always going to be someone who presents a question you hadn't asked or a perspective you hadn't considered when you're making a decision. And when you hear something especially that challenges your thinking, don't get upset, don't get defensive, get curious and dive into it and find out more so that you're in a better position. So I think from a leadership perspective, those were things I learned very quickly.
That's really cool. Yeah, I can see where you pick up a lot of things from a lot of smart people as you go through your tenure. Yeah. I tell you, I got to say that when we saw you get when they made you president that year in Nashville in the hotel. That was one of the best speech. That was the best speech I've ever seen you give. I mean, you just nailed that speech. Don and I were so happy for you because I know there was a lot of pressure on you. It was a big audience.
Yeah.
And, so you just nailed that thing, man. It was a great speech.
I appreciate that. That was actually not when I started the speech, but just a few seconds in, I probably got as scared speaking as I ever have, because I had what I call a throwaway line. It was just a line to get things started. It wasn't intended to make anyone go ooh or laugh or anything. And I got a laugh. And in my mind, I went, oh no, this audience is completely with me. So thank God for the Bill Gove Speech Workshop, because that opening story I told, I know that inside out. I can say it in my sleep. My wife can say it in her sleep because she's heard it so many times. And while I was giving that, I was actually able to go through the rest of my speech in my head and rearrange a couple of things. And I actually changed my ending while I was giving that because of the reaction, because it made me go, am I taking this audience exactly where they need to go? Because I can take them wherever I want. And is it where they need to go? And I made a couple of minor modifications. And if I'd been worried about what I was going to say, oh my God, I never could have done that.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do, especially when it's important like that one was. I mean, that was a big moment for you. I mean, you worked for 11 years to get that position, and that was your acceptance speech. And well, you sure nailed it, man. It was
thank you.
It was dynamite. I know what you mean about the Bill Gove system. I've been on stage so many times over the years, and for whatever reason, like you say, all of a sudden you just get some surge of, anxiety, and then you pull off that system and you think, oh, I go backstage and go, oh my God, I'm really glad I went to that little 3-day workshop.
So many.
Oh, if I had a nickel for every time I said that over 25 years of a speaking career, jeez. Every graduate seems to say that, but
absolutely.
When did you set the goal do you remember what year you set the goal to become president?
So it's one of these things, like probably the first time I said it was probably around 2007, 2008. Okay. The first time it was intentional was probably around 2011. And so, the first time you say it's kind of like, well, maybe I'd like to do this someday. And then you learn a little bit more and you go, oh, okay, well, this is a bigger deal than I thought it was. Do I really want to do it? And then it became an intention. And it became, the question then became, okay, who do I need to become in order to do that? And that's not about personality. That's not about my core sense of who I am, but what are the experiences I needed to gain? What are the skill sets I need to develop? What are the attitudes that are required for that position? And how do I take those attitudes on, get those experience and learn those? And so then it became very intentional with getting on additional boards to give me additional board experience, with working on myself through coaching and mentorship to smooth off some rough spots that I had to work through. A big one for me was connections with people. I got some feedback that people felt I was a little distant and they didn't know exactly who I was. And when I examined that came back to something that happened to me in high school that had caused me to create barriers with people. And as I worked through and reduced those barriers, people began to respond to me in a very different way. Even though my core hadn't changed, what I was displaying to the world had changed. And that became a big part of it. So there were a lot of things I had to work through over that time. In fact, the first time I tried to get elected to the board, I failed. I got about a third of the vote, which, for the math majors out there, it's not a majority. But a lot of people said, hey, Matt, please run again. And I did 2 years later, and I was fortunate to be elected to the board to serve my first 2-year term on the board, which then qualified me to go on to potentially become the international president. And so, it's a long journey. And there's a lot of things that can derail you, and a lot of self-doubt that happens, a lot of imposter syndrome that kicks in, and you just got to keep working through it. And, Bill Gove said in his Golden Gavel acceptance speech, when he got that from Toastmasters back in the 90s, he said, there's only way to get something done is to just start doing it and keep doing it till it's done. And so I just started doing it. I kept doing it until I got there.
That's amazing. I remember, I'm pretty sure the first person I heard tell me way back in the day that you wanted to be president of Toastmasters was Ed Lamont.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I said, well, you mean of a club? And he says, no, of Toastmasters International. He wants to be president. I said, of the whole thing? And he said, yeah. And I said, wow, that's really unique. I mean, wow. Okay. How do you do that? He goes, I don't know. He said, he's very intent on doing it, apparently. And I said, that's great. And then that was years ago. Like you said, that had to be 15 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Would you recommend, I know obviously you recommend Toastmasters, joining a club, but would you recommend that people get involved in the organization itself, like you did? Maybe not president, but just in all those parts of it.
Look, there's so many opportunities in Toastmasters, like any other organization. You get out of it directly related to what you put into it. So when people join to learn skills, and then hopefully they continue to teach other people those skills. When you get outside of your club environment, which is where most of the magic happens, and it opens up a whole nother world of Toastmasters, and you can really work on your leadership opportunities, even at the local level, just, being a coach and mentor for clubs, or being what we call an area director, which is working with 4 to 6 clubs and helping them become successful, starting new clubs. And if you're going to go to the board, you got to go through all of these experiences prior to getting there. But some people just join to help them out. So it really just depends on what your goals are. I mean, when I joined Toastmasters, my thought was not to, I'm going to become an international president, or I'm going to go serve and become a leader through Toastmasters. Speaking was something I enjoyed doing in high school, middle school. I'd been a minister, so I'd spoken, but it was something I enjoyed doing it. But what I saw was evaluations, and that's why I really wanted to get involved, was because of the evaluation aspect of helping build other people's significance through speaking. And that's why I joined. And then I found just a great love for it. I'm one of these people who when I join an organization, I either leave very quickly or I get deeply involved. And I got very deeply involved in Toastmasters.
Well, I know you've been a leader in a lot of I've watched you over the years. I mean, I know you're a long-term guy. I mean, you stick it out, and you've done a lot of great things. And so I'm not surprised as you became president. But boy, that's a long road to hoe, man. It is. It's a great achievement. I congratulate you, Matt. I know all of us are very proud that you that we knew you as you got in there and you spent the time it took to do it. Well, so now that you know how the sausage is made, so to speak, in Toastmasters International, how do you feel about the offering that Toastmasters makes to the public? Has it changed your view of it, or?
No, I mean, it's deepened my view of it, because you begin to see some of the thought process and the magic behind it. So when you realize why Toastmasters does certain things at certain times, you're like, oh, that makes sense now. At the district level, we have a position, the entry level to the senior executive team at a district, which a district is going to be around 100 to 150 clubs in a local area. That's called the club growth director. And on the performance scorecard, they've got 2 of the 3 most important items on the performance scorecard. And they're the first person, the newest person on the team. And from an organizational effectiveness standpoint, that doesn't make the most sense. But from a leadership development, it does, because one of the points there is we're trying to teach people this job is so big, you can't do it on your own. You're learning to become an executive leader, which is accomplishing through others, not necessarily through your own effort. Yes, there's your own effort. There are things only you can do. But our goal is for you to enable other people to do those things to accomplish the goals. So we give you too much to do by yourself intentionally. And when you see that, you're like, oh, I've always wondered, why do we give all that to the first person on the team? Well, now I know. So it deepens your understanding of it. Yeah. Are there messy things in the background? Yeah. Every organization's got messy things in the background. But for the most part, they stay in the background, and that's okay. It's like when you go to a big event, there's chaos going back from the convention organizer. There's things that didn't go right, but if the audience doesn't see it, nobody cares.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any big organization, no question about it. Yeah. You know, why do you think, I mean, you know, we've both been professional speakers for a long time and that, but you know, that's a small group of people. But in terms of just for the average person walking down the street who jumps into Toastmasters, why do you think public speaking itself is so important for people's success? I mean, what is it about it that you think in general that makes it so important?
Well, if you look at industry statistics and what business leaders say they need in employees, you certainly get the values, integrity certainly up there, but so-called soft skills, and I hate calling speaking a soft skill because it's an essential skill, but that ability to communicate your ideas effectively is so important, and the self-confidence that comes along with it. See, we teach public speaking and communication, but the end result is people who are more genuinely self-confident, not ego-based, but they're able to say, you know what, I'm pretty good at that. And that's no slight on anybody else. Yeah, there's probably somebody better. I mean, let's be real. There's only one best in the world at anything, and chances are I'm not it. There's no gold medal for speaking skills at the Olympics. So, maybe I could compete for that, but I know there's better speakers out there than I am, but I bring a unique perspective, and that's what we need to hear. We need to hear people's unique perspectives, because I know I've heard speakers and they're really good speakers, and other people just absolutely love them. And I'm not going to name anybody, but they don't connect with me. Then I hear another person and I'm like, oh, wow, I really connect with this speaker. And maybe it's not your favorite speaker. That's okay, because we're giving people hope, I think, is what speakers do. So I think speaking, when you have that ability to communicate your ideas to somebody else in an effective way, it changes your perspective on life, and it changes the opportunities that are available to you.
Yeah, it's love your need to, you say, state your points of view or idea, whatever it is, and now you can well, right? You get used to audiences saying, "Oh, I'm not really sure about that. I don't." It's not a big deal. Everyone, like you say, hey, there's the smartest person in the world somewhere. It's not me.
Yeah, and I think my goal when I'm speaking is that somebody goes, hey, you know what, maybe I could do something with that. And if they walk away and people say, maybe I could do something with that, fabulous. We're in good shape.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, speaking of fear and speaking, or as you say, fear of, and I think you're right about that, fear of being criticized. So I don't want to get up in front of people because I'll feel stupid, or I'll feel less than, or, whatever it is. Now that you've traveled all over the world on behalf of Toastmasters, how long do you think it takes, or do you know by statistic, if there's such a thing exists, does it take someone who's really scared, not someone that's, gregarious and, that type of personality, like a salesperson personality, but someone who's really scared? Like we've both seen a lot. You've seen more than I have probably, but you get a lot of people that are just, they're scared to be up there. They're shaking and they push themselves somehow. How long does it take that person, you think, on average, to go from that to, I'm not saying they're keynoting the national convention, for, IBM, but just so they're not afraid anymore. And now they're empowered to speak up. How long does that process take?
What we see in Toastmasters, by our best guess, and this is not a scientific study, is somewhere around 6 to 8 Toastmasters presentations that are 5 to 7 minutes long, typically.
Wow, I would think it would be longer. That's fast, right?
Because we're providing a positive and supportive environment. And, Dr. Smedley, the founder of Toastmasters, stumbled on this more than 100 years ago when he was first thinking about Toastmasters. And now psychologists will tell you that it's absolutely true. Positive feedback works better than negative feedback to drive better performance. We know that. You know that from the mental toughness studies you've done. And when we give people positive feedback, real positive feedback, not fake positive feedback, but like, hey, this is something you did really well. People like, oh, I did that. I accomplished something. And then you build on success and build on success and build on success. And usually after 6 to 8 speeches, they'll get over that fear. Now, if they stop, the fear will come back. but if they're out there speaking at least, a few times a year, they'll probably won't get the fear back. Now, certainly there's new fears that come up. You go from an audience of 10 or 12 people to an audience of 500. Most people find that scarier. I actually find the 10 to 12 scarier than the 500 because you can kind of hide. And I've talked about that in the past. I mean, in an audience of 500, nobody knows who you're looking at, but an audience of 10 or 12, everybody knows who you're looking at. So I think but that's the perception. A bigger audience is scarier because you're opening yourself up to more people being critical of you. But if you get that view of that confidence of like, hey, I've got something worth hearing. And if you want to hear it, great. And if you don't, just don't be rude to me and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I remember my first big audience as a professional speaker was 7,000 people. And I looked at the auditorium the night before and I thought, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm just going to have a heart attack and just die right on the stage. This place is huge. I was so overwhelmed. Then when I was backstage before I spoke, I looked out and I thought, oh, and Bill said, you shouldn't look out. Don't look out. Don't look out at the crowd. Don't do it. It's like when you're jumping out of an airplane. Have you ever done that? Yeah. And they tell, don't look down because you will not jump. And I looked down, of course, when I did that too, not being dumb. And Bill said, don't look. I looked. I said, oh, I go, there's like 1 million people there. He said, oh, it'll be fine. It's the same speech as given it's like, think of it as a giant Kiwanis club. That's what he said to me. It's just to give us he said, didn't you work West Palm Beach last week? And I said, yeah, we had like 14 people there and 7 of them weren't even paying attention.
That's right.
He said, it's the same thing, basically. It's a giant Kiwanis club.
Yeah. Yeah, but to me, it's easier. I just have this different mindset on it. I find a larger audience easier because I know the larger the audience, the more people I'm going to connect with, the more potential impact I'm going to have. And I feed on the energy. I mean, you've seen me after a speech and that energy I've got. I feed on that. And a bigger audience, man, I've got more energy to feed on. So I don't need to worry about regulating my energy during a speech in a large audience because I'll have all the energy I want. I've actually got to worry about, tamping it down sometimes. So to me, it's just a different mindset, and it's how you frame things in your mind. So I just look as like, I've got more chance to make more impact. I'm going to touch more people and I'm going to get more energy back from them. Why wouldn't I want to be in front of a bigger audience?
Sure. Well, like you say, Toastmasters, the clubs offer so much support. Everyone's kind of in the same boat. A lot of the people are nervous. I remember the first time I went to a Toastmasters was, I was starting as a professional speaker, so I wasn't really afraid, but Ed Lamont was there and Tim Morrell. It was the West Palm Beach Club. But did you ever go to that club?
Oh, yeah, I've been to that club.
Okay. So this is like 1996 or something like that. And Tim Morrell was there, and Tim Morrell's mother was a member of this club, right? And she was, I don't know, she had to be 80 something years old at the time. And they used to have do they still have contests in the Toastmasters clubs?
Yeah.
So we didn't do it at the Bill Gove Club. I think we just voted that out for some reason. But at the West Palm Beach Club, they did. And I literally, over the next couple of years, I was doing pretty well. I was starting to do pretty well as a speaker, professional speaker. I would come off from a speech tour and go speak. And one time I lost to Tim's mom, and she was like 85 years old. And Tim never let me forget it. It was like the greatest thing that ever happened. Everyone loved it that she beat me. And it was fantastic. But my point is that, as you say, Matt, it's so important because the people are so supportive. You are in this warm, loving environment where people are like, hey, you just getting up there, you got guts to get up there. When you're shaking, it takes a lot of courage to do something you're that afraid to do. It's easy enough to just say, hey, I'll blow the meeting off. I'm too scared to do table topics but people don't. They have the courage to get there. And then everyone sort of puts their arms around them. And it's a pretty amazing change process to watch, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Because I've seen people who, I've seen people who've had physical manifestations of their fear.
Yeah.
Up there on the first time, whether it's shaking or stomach problems or, other reactions, they just couldn't do it. I saw one woman, and she later on, was competing in contests, but I think she got one word out the first time she got up to speak.
Yeah. It can be terrifying.
Yeah.
You can build it up in your mind where it's really scary and it's socially frightening, and that can be really a real thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Matt, I'm putting you on the spot now. So you've gone to the top level here. You're the international president. You can't get any higher than that. So you've seen everything from the top down, from the bottom up in the beginning, from the top down now. Would you say honestly? I mean, I'm thinking of people that might be watching this because you're, past president of Toastmasters International, that maybe they're looking at Toastmasters, maybe they're afraid to speak. They're not sure if this is for them or not. They're kind of afraid. They're thinking, I don't know about this if this is my thing. Would you say that Toastmasters, is it really for everyone, or is it only for certain people in a certain mindset, or what's your take on that?
This is another conversation I've had about how many people want to get better at something, and then how many people will actually take action to it. So can it help anyone? Yes, it can help anyone. You have to have the willingness to want to change. So I think what I've come to realize is, people say, well, people can't change. Yeah, that's not true. People can change. But I think what happens is the pain of changing has to be, or the pain of remaining the same has to be greater than the pain of changing in order for them to want to change. And so I think people have to be in that place of, I want to make a change and I'm willing to take the effort to do it. That's the most important mindset. And I think the other thing is, if you come in thinking you know everything about public speaking, you're probably not going to get much improvement because you're not going to listen. And I remember someone, I was speaking to him, and he's a really nice guy, but he's competing in Toastmasters contests for years. And he just said, he goes, I gave him some feedback. I just, well, here's what my observation. Because, people had been telling me that for years, and I just keep rejecting it. And I just looked at him and said, well, if people were telling me the same thing for years, I think I would consider it. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but I would at least consider it if I'm hearing the same thing over and over from people. So you got to have that mindset of willing to change, but not thinking you know it all. And if you're anywhere in the middle there, you're in good place.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Matt. I think a lot. I heard someone say the other day that, if you're not good at something, you're afraid to do something, you're taking lessons in something, you almost have to be willing to play the fool for a while you learn, because you're learning something, and you don't know how to do it. I mean, I take guitar lessons. I just took one this morning, and I'm learning different things. And my guitar teacher's like this. His band used to open for AC/DC. It's like,
okay.
The guy's he was a college professor. Taught guitar at the university and the whole. So he's obviously a world-class player. And I sit there and he just says to do it, and it just doesn't happen that way. I'm pretty slow at it, but then you pick it up a little bit at a time. And I think speaking, is the same kind of thing, and to your point, after 25 years of being a professional speaker, I think now I really appreciate how much there is to professional speaking. I think it's like the more you learn about it, the more you realize how much you don't know. And it's like this never ending thing. Wouldn't you say? Yeah.
And Steve, I don't want to make you feel bad. Did you see that 11-year-old girl on America's Got Talent who was slaying Puppets of Doom by Metallica?
Oh, is that right?
11-year-old girl from India, man. She just.
Oh, she played guitar.
Yeah.
Guitar. Oh, I've seen some. I haven't seen that one, but I've seen some on TikTok. It's like, I just turned it off. I throw the phone down. It's got to be fake. It's got to be.
Somebody, and it may have been you. I don't remember, but it sounds to me like something you would say. The saying was the easier it is for you to be good at something, the harder it is going to be for you to be great at that same thing.
Yeah.
Because you got to learn the discipline. And that's what it comes to. And everyone's got different goals. Okay. A lot of people are joining Toastmasters because, oh my God, I've got to give a toast at my best friend's wedding, and I'm like scared to death and I don't know what to do. And they have enough time that they can work through that. That's their only goal. And that's great. If they came and met their goal, wonderful. Some people want to get better for work or better for the community or better, in their career. Other people want to go out and start sharing a bigger message that, can impact more people. Toastmasters can accommodate any of those goals. It just really depends on what you want as a person.
I mean, how many things can you say, in life that without sounding, hyperbolic, that it changes your life? And Toastmasters really does literally change people's lives.
It right? does. I see it over again. I can say that it's changed my life. I mean, look at the opportunities I've had that I never would have had without Toastmasters. I never would have met you without Toastmasters. Huge influence on my life. Never would have met so many people around the world. When I look at my Facebook friends map, and my social media map, I mean, like, I've got connections all over the world. I can go to 150 countries and call somebody locally because of my position in Toastmaster and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Where should I go that like is off the beaten path? That's away from the touristy stuff, and like find that little hole in the wall restaurant that's just amazing, or that little secret spot that the locals don't want the tourists to know about, because I've got connections all over the world because of what Toastmasters has done for me, and because of what I've been able to in turn around and do with Toastmasters.
See, that's what I do too. When I travel out of the country, I'll call Toastmasters and I'll just say, "It's Matt Kinsey. I need to know a good." Okay, it's not really Matt, but I know Matt Kinsey. Okay, former international president. And they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Well, go to do it all the time, man. It works really well."
Yeah, absolutely. Probably not.
On a serious note, I know you've got to agree with this. I think everyone should do it. I think everyone should have a year where they go through maybe they do it in high school or something, when you're a sophomore in high school or something, or junior or whatever, because it is a life changer. How much does it cost? What are the costs associated with it? I know it's not much, or it wasn't much back in the day.
So the Toastmasters International dues are $10 a month.
$10 a month.
Yeah. Okay. And then you might have local dues. Like we meet at a restaurant. Bill Gove meets at a restaurant. So you buy lunch. Well, you're going to buy lunch anyway. So there might be some local dues depending on where you're at to pay for a meeting space or something like that. But it's offered in person, it's offered online, and even in hybrid environments. So you can get your needs met wherever you're at.
Yeah, Matt, once I don't know if you know this or not, because I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that, I was talking to you. We had a brief conversation, I think, on the phone, and you said, yeah, you talk about how they were meeting online. Yeah. And then I went to the Bill Gove meeting. I called Ed Lamont and I said, hey, I want to jump in on the Bill Gove meeting. I hear Matt says that you guys are doing it on Zoom. And he said, yeah. So I jumped on. I didn't say anything. I just went on and just watched it and everything. And then we took the Bill Gove Speech Club concept, but basically we kind of patterned a little bit after Toastmasters in terms of meeting in person. And we took it online, and we've been doing it online every week ever since. And it works unbelievably well, especially because we have people on from Australia, from just like you guys do, all over the world. It's pretty amazing how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's different. I think the modern professional speaker has to be very flexible. They need to be able to prepare to present on stage. I think that's still the biggest draw. But online has certainly expanded the reach of many speakers around the world, expanded their flexibility, reduced cost, allowed them to, get a little more semblance of work-life balance. I know work-life balance for a speaker is not a thing, but, work-life balance, because they're not having to travel, so there's a lot of opportunities, and a lot of businesses are wanting online speakers. So it's a lot less expensive for them to not create that whole environment, where they've already got a Zoom account and they can get 500 or 1,000 people on there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for speakers, and you've got to be able to do the both, but they are different. Those skill sets are different. I mean, it's as different as cricket and baseball. It kind of looks the same when you glance at it, but there's a lot of subtle differences. One thing I found, online takes more energy. I spoke in Karachi last year, and we were under a big tent with fans.
Where the hell is Karachi?
Karachi, Pakistan.
Pakistan. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. It was 110 degrees outside, and we're under a tent with fans. Okay. Geez. And I'm up on stage, and I'm not sweating at all speaking, but I get online, and because everything has to be bigger. The emotions have to be bigger. The energy has to be bigger. And I'm exhausted when I speak, because I'm also not feeling that same feedback from the audience. So you've got to get used to that, because if you go and do that the first time, you're not going to be prepared. The first time you're like, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, everyone loves this speech, and like no one's reacting to it at all, because you're not putting enough energy in, because that camera reduces that energy by some significant percentage.
Yeah, I did a lot of that during the pandemic. I probably did, I don't know, a couple hundred, I guess over a couple of, maybe 100, maybe not a
Yeah.
couple hundred, but whatever it was, a bunch of them where they were hybrids.
Yeah.
Where, you had a Zoom camera in the room. So you're talking to a camera and you're talking to a small group of people that actually showed up in the hall that wanted to be there. And that it wasn't mandatory, obviously, because of COVID, but it was it was like having two audiences. And to your point, it's a little bit different.
That's the weirdest, because you've got to, some of the speakers I know, they'll actually put like a picture frame around the camera.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you remember to look at the camera, because I've seen a lot of speakers doing a hybrid and they totally forget about the camera. That's the hardest. The hybrid.
It really is. Yeah.
The hardest.
Yeah. How many countries is you mentioned Pakistan. How many countries is Toastmasters in?
150 as of the last count.
150. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So let's say someone's watching this, they just heard it, like they don't even know Toastmasters exists, let's say, or they're thinking about it. How do they find a club? How do they do that?
Well, they go to toastmasters.org/find, and they'll pull up a list. They can put their postal code wherever they are in the world, or their country or a city, and they'll tell them what clubs are in the area. They can also do a search for online clubs, and we've got clubs that meet online almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it doesn't matter what time you need to find a club. There's an online club somewhere in the world that exists. We've got about, I think, around 3,500, 4,000 online only clubs for Toastmasters.
Wow, that's impressive. So they can go. Do all the clubs meet at noon, or some of them meet early and late? Or
there's people meeting at all times. There's clubs that meet at 7 a.m. There's clubs that meet at 7 p.m. Clubs that meet on Saturday. Clubs that meet at noon. And with the online, it doesn't matter what time. You can probably find a club somewhere that meets at your time.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, my next club is the Karachi, Pakistan Toastmasters Club, because you spoke there. So now that's my new goal.
There you go.
I'm going to tell the Matt Kinsey story when I get there. Well, Matt, as I mentioned in the intro, I know you co-founded a very successful cybersecurity business. I know you're really busy doing that. So now that you've accomplished your goal of being international president of Toastmasters, what's next on the Matt Kinsey vision board?
Well, there's a couple things. One is I'm working on a concept about leadership lies that I think is really interesting. When I talk to people, they seem to be pretty interested in. And for your audience, please feel free to put comments in about what you think about this concept. But there's a lot of things that we're told as developing leaders that as we move into our leadership experience, we realize that, yeah, that maybe was well-intentioned advice, but it just wasn't right. And maybe it wasn't right for the circumstance, or maybe there's a dark side to it. And it started with somebody was telling me the story of, Aesop's fables and the rabbit or the tortoise and the hare, well-known story in Western civilization about a tortoise and a hare having a race, and the hare got a big lead and he went to sleep, and the tortoise kept going and plodding away, and the hare woke up and it was too late and the tortoise won the race. That's the short version of the story. And Aesop's story of that, his moral of the story was that slow and steady wins the race. And I was sitting there thinking about it, I'm like, that's slow and steady doesn't win the race unless fast gives up. And so the point we all get out of that story is completely wrong. It's steady wins, and fast and steady is going to beat slow and steady every day of the week. And so I started thinking about what other leadership lies have I been told, that I realized that either they were just operating at an elementary school level as opposed to a high school or a graduate degree level. And so that's what I'm working on. I'm trying to develop 27 of those into a book. So I just registered leadershiplies.com. If you go there, there's nothing there yet. It'll be up in the next couple of weeks, but I just registered Leadership Lies. And so you'll see some more stuff on social media from me on that. So that's one thing I'm going to be working on. And the second thing is, just continue to grow my business. I mean, you talk about solving big problems. Cybersecurity is a big problem. And I know you've had some personal experience with the things that happen with cybersecurity, and helping companies protect themselves is a really big deal. So spend a lot of time on that. I'm actually speaking later this week at a cybersecurity conference with some other chief information security officers, talking about enterprise. What is enterprise grade? Because people say that all the time. What does that really mean? Is it marketing speakers or something really to it? So I think you'll see me speaking on cybersecurity and speaking on leadership coming up in the next year or so.
Oh, I love that idea. You know, I know you and I had talked a few weeks ago about that leadership lies idea. That's a great idea. This wasn't inspired by our current political race.
Well, I mean,
lies going around there.
No, but see, those are just plain lies. Those aren't leadership lies.
Okay, those are okay. Got it. I didn't know there was a distinction.
Yeah, I'm talking more about the lies that somebody told you, like, oh, don't ask your team to do anything you want to do. And I'm like, but then they can only do what you could do.
Right. Yeah.
There's a dark side. Let's go Star Wars here. It's not May the 4th, but we can go there anyway. I mean, there's a dark side to a lot of these well-meaning, well-intentioned pieces of advice that people give us about leadership. And as you stay in your swim lane is another one. Yeah, swim lanes don't work. We need collaboration. And so I use a baseball analogy, because based on the rules of the game and the circumstances, people know where they're supposed to go and who they're supposed to cover if somebody's out of position. But a swim lane, you got a narrow swim lane. That's it. So there's a dark side to these analogies when we talk about them, and we often see a lot of unintended consequences unless you take the time to think through what are those potential downfalls of this approach. And we know any analogy falls apart at a certain point. So it's just challenging people to think through whatever analogy they're using for leadership to go to the next level.
I really like that, man. I look forward to reading that book when you put it out, or whatever form you put it in, because you're making.
Maybe I'll send it to you to write the foreword.
Yeah, I'd be honored to do it. It really is a great thing, because you do get those kinds of, those platitudes, and we think they're all right, and we probably ought to use critical thinking skills and break it down and see if it's actually got any. God knows it probably came from the 12th century or something.
I mean, some of them did. Some of them are newer, but they still, I just remember things. My wife loves NCIS, and Jethro Gibbs is like, never apologize. It's a sign of weakness. And I'm like, yeah, but you need vulnerability.
Yeah, that's right.
You need leaders need to be vulnerable to give their team hope and to give their team understanding that, hey, you know what? Even my leader's going through these doubts and issues, and they're working through it. So maybe I can work through it too. Yeah,
you're right. Never apologizing is bad advice.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not going to be married for very long if you don't apologize.
No, and you're not going to be very popular at the watering hole either.
Exactly. No, exactly. That kind of goes across the board. But I've heard that same thing, and yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll look forward to seeing that, Matt. And anything you want to close with in terms of just going back for a second, for anyone that's watching this, that's, maybe thinking about, maybe I'll dip my toe in the Toastmasters, pond and see if I fit. Any last advice or suggestions for that person?
Yeah, just go. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Go to one meeting and check it out. All right. Make an informed decision. So don't sit there and go, well, that sounds like it's for me. That doesn't sound like it's for me. The only way you're going to see is you're going to go check it out, because there's a magic, as Steve was talking about in the Toastmasters meeting, that I can't describe. You have to be present to see it happen and to see that transformation. So don't make a commitment to do anything besides go to one meeting and check it out to see if it's a good fit for you, can help you out. I know it can. I think Steve knows it can, but it's really about you and your willingness. So just go commit to go to one meeting and explore so you can make an informed decision.
And that's really good advice. I hope everyone will do it, because Matt's absolutely right, 100%. It's a life changer. Just, take a small step and go forward. Matt, I got to tell you, I appreciate you being on the podcast. I know you're really busy. You're working your cybersecurity business and all the things you and Janine have going. So I appreciate you taking the time. And I just want to say, on behalf of all the South Florida Toastmasters and speakers, that all our friends, we're all, at the risk of sounding condescending, we were all very proud of you. And, you set a goal like that, such a long-term goal, to be president of Toastmasters, and you did it. So congratulations on all your success, as always. And again, thanks for coming on, Matt.
Glad to be here.
All right. I appreciate it. All right, guys. I appreciate you watching the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Take care.